Welcome to the Get Over Yourself podcast. This is author and athlete Brad Kearns discovering ways to be healthy, fit, and happy in hectic, high-stress modern life. So let's slow down and take a deep breath, take a cold plunge, and expertly balance that competitive intensity with an appreciation of the journey. That's the theme of the show. Here we go. The Get Over Yourself podcast is brought to you by Almost Heaven, beautiful compact home use sauna kits, ancestral supplements, grass-fed organ meats in a capsule, DNA Fit, genetic testing for custom diet and exercise recommendations, Integro Health, high-potency liquid probiotic called Flourish, Organifi, organic powdered superfoods, delicious green, gold, and red powders, Wild Idea Buffalo, sustainable, grass-fed, beyond organic, real ketones, clean burning ketones for athletic performance and fat loss. And check out the bradkearns.com/shop page. That's my personal selection of favorite products for health, fitness, and peak performance. And here we go with the show.
What a lousy way to start the day, and then you jump into the traffic jam, and then you go see your mean boss and get criticized, and you're triggering these protection responses all day long. Fight or flight response becomes exhausted, immune system is suppressed, and it's bad news. Whatever the circumstances are, whatever the environmental signals are that generate these negative thoughts and trigger the protection response, it might as well be the tiger chasing us for the level of destruction that it causes to our potential for health. And so we want to send that renewal signal to our genes that Dr. Artavani talks about when he's talking about fasting or lifting heavy weights. We send a renewal signal to our genes, an anti-aging repair and renewal signal. That's the opposite of the protection response, where we are fight or flight, protecting ourselves from immediate damage and trauma with negative long-term health repercussions. Finally, we have the elevator music. That's the cute term invented by Dr. Lipton for perceptions that do not trigger a response. So it's sort of like background stimulus that has no positive or negative response. That might be your old boyfriend after your 78th argument, where he's going off and you're not really listening to the words and you could give a crap. So I don't know, is that progress from triggering a protection response at every argument? I don't know.
Okay, if you're ready to change your life, please check out the Primal Blueprint Mastery courses, of which I am the host. The exercise was to bring our books to life with a comprehensive online multimedia educational experience. We have the Primal Blueprint 21-day transformation, so you can go primal, ditch grains and sugars, learn what primal living is all about. We have the Keto Reset Mastery course. If you've built up some good momentum and now you're ready to try this keto thing and do it right once and for all and be guided step by step throughout the content in the entire book, The Keto Reset Diet, through video. If you're too lazy to read, just watch me talk you through the whole thing. We also have the Primal Endurance Mastery course, which is the world's most comprehensive library of interviews with experts, great athletes, and covering the entire content of the Primal Endurance book. An absolute must-have for an endurance athlete who's trying to do it right instead of get broken down and burnt out, and many other ones. We have a stand-up desk experience called Don't Just Sit There with Katie Bowman. We have a paleo cooking boot camp where you can cook for a couple hours on the weekend and have meals for your family all throughout the week. Great courses. Click the links at bradkearns.com and learn more. Welcome to part 2, where we get a little more science-y in deep with these amazing insights inspired by the great book, Biology of Belief by Dr. Bruce Lipton. So please listen to the first show where I present the compelling premise that our thoughts can manifest a new reality. So the opening premise for this discussion is not too pleasant. I was not too happy to learn this about myself. I want to think of myself as a conscious, mindful human being. But in Biology of Belief, Dr. Lipton explains that by the age of 35, 95 to 99% of your thoughts and actions originate from the habitual programming of the subconscious mind. This mostly happened between the ages of 0 and 6, when we absorb all of our environmental happenings like a sponge. So these are your memorized behaviors, emotional reactions, beliefs and perceptions that run in the background like an application on your smartphone. Brain scientists report that we think between 12,000 and 60,000 thoughts per day, and that 98% of them are identical to yesterday's thoughts, and that 80% of your subconscious thoughts are negative. Listen to my shows with Christopher Smith with the applicability to the golfer and standing over a shot where you have to hit it across water onto the green, and this subconscious programming kicks in about what a crappy player you are, and you might even verbalize some of these self-limiting beliefs that will have a tremendous impact on your ability to execute the proper shot because you lack the confidence and you have hardwired beliefs based on flawed, traumatic past programming from hitting crappy shots. So we want to escape from this prison, and leveraging the content from the last show, we're going to get into some epigenetics 101. That's the study of how the environmental signals of all kinds affect genetic function, epigenetics. So an environmental signal is anything. Could be a workout stimulus like lifting a weight. It could be jumping into the chest freezer for a cold plunge. That's an environmental signal, faux show. Or it could be the formation of a thought. Then what happens is that each of our cells have extremely thin membranes with receptors that extend from the inside to the outside of the membrane. The receptors process signals from the environment, signals that are mediated by switches in the membranes, which Lipton calls perception switches. So our perception switches send signals to kickstart the familiar process of transcription and translation. You may know this from the central dogma of molecular biology. I would know it too if I had paid attention in biology class in high school. So I had to brush up on this stuff when creating the Primal Health Coach coaching course material. But this is the basics of biological function in the cells. So this transcription and translation is whereby DNA information in the cell's nucleus flows to the RNA, which interacts with ribosome, which is a protein-making machinery located in your cells, and the specific amino acids are assembled into protein molecules that are needed to make, for example, a liver cell, a muscle cell, or any other highly specialized cell in the body. So that's just basic science, the central dogma of molecular biology and how cellular function works. But we're adding this layer of insight about the perception switches that is actually telling the DNA what to do. This story, this overlay with the insight about the perception switches, refutes the dated notions that the nucleus and the genetic coding contained inside of the nucleus are the brains of the cell, with the membrane just serving as this passive bystander to contain the cellular material inside a cell. Actually, the membrane and its receptors are the actual brains of the cell. That means genetic determinism is BS. We're not walking around subject to the mercy of these genes that have no brain. We are sending signals from the environment to tell our cells what to do. Quoting Lipton, the cell membrane is an organic information processor. It senses the environment and converts that awareness into information that can influence the activity of protein pathways and control the expression of genes. End quote. If you need to come up for air, if it's getting too scientific, just hang for a little bit because we're trying to put everything into practical significance here. Right now, we're just talking about how environmental signals actually can influence cellular function rather than this stuff happening independent. It's important because when we catch a cold or get a sore throat or get a migraine or get cancer, this stuff is not happening independent of environmental signals like we might erroneously believe. The traffic jam example, again, if you get all frustrated and spike your stress hormones and suppress immune function, you're going down a slippery downward slope. Same with your self-limiting beliefs and thoughts that affect cellular function. Okay, so if your perception switches in the cell membranes detect that you are having a lousy day, boo-hoo, my traffic jam, my boss is so mean to me, they will consult your DNA genetic blueprints instructions for making what? Stress hormones, or making tears of sadness and anguish and frustration. And then these gene transcription factors, back to the basic notions of biology, will manifest into a tearful reality. If instead your perception switches detect that the traffic jam is a great chance to listen to an interesting podcast, engage some deep diaphragmatic breathing, these good vibes will literally, that's the key word here, these good vibes will literally permeate your being. You will instead produce mood-elevating hormones like serotonin and dopamine, along with a smile and a lightness in your step when you finally arrive at your destination. Oh my gosh, hopefully my friend Gil is listening and referencing back to college years. We had the single worst traffic jam nightmare of all time, driving from San Diego to Los Angeles. I think it's 120, 140 miles, and it took us 5 hours. Count them, 5 hours. Non-stop traffic jam. It was a 100-degree day. Smoggy back in those days, folks. Let me tell you, Los Angeles and SoCal's looking a lot better. But in that 5 hours, we had the greatest time and a lifetime of fun, exciting memories, because Gil was a wild man back then, and he did some fun stuff to his car. Like he took a screwdriver and switched the windshield wiper dispenser sideways. So we'd pull up to a car. Remember, it's a hot day. We'd get a convertible maybe next to us, and he'd hit his windshield wiper squirters, and the car next to us, or the folks in the convertible, would get squirted from water. And we'd have a straight face looking straight ahead, and it was never-ending source of amusement, especially in a traffic jam. He'd do other things like spontaneously get out of his car and jump into another car, especially if there were cute girls in the other car, and ride with them for a while. And sometimes we'd get 80 yards behind or 80 yards ahead. But anyway, there's the traffic jam example brought to real life by Brad Kearns and old memories of crazy times. Yeah. So this theory of relativity applies here too, from our friend Einstein. Your perception of time itself can alter, right? So if that 5-hour traffic jam is an absolute misery, anyone else raise your hand if you were in that traffic jam on a summer day, mid-80s, driving north on the 5 and the 405? Well, that 5 hours will seem like an eternity, but to us, it was over with in a snap because we were having fun the entire time. And so we actually have the scientific fact that you can go to the fancy clock at the observatory and realize that 60 seconds, 60 minutes makes an hour. But this significance of time is irrelevant without the perception of the observer. You get what I'm saying? So the 5-hour traffic jam is literally 5 hours, that's right, but it has completely different associations based on our perception switches and what we think about it and what hormones we manufacture. Okay, so speaking of these perceptions, Dr. Lipton explains that we have 3 fundamental categories of our perceptions. Number 1, perceptions that promote a growth response in the cells. That would be moving toward a stimulus. We're leaning into the exciting time of a traffic jam. Number 2 is those that promote a protection response, moving away from the stimulus. That would be encountering the vicious tiger in primal times and having to move away from that stimulus and being riddled with incredible fear in 1 second flat as soon as you see the predator. Finally, we have the elevator music. That's the cute term invented by Dr. Lipton for perceptions that do not trigger a response. So it's sort of like background stimulus that has no positive or negative response. That might be your old boyfriend after your 78th argument where he's going off and you're not really listening to the words and you could give a crap. So I don't know, is that progress from triggering a protection response at every argument? I don't know. Well, what's the most powerful trigger for that vaunted growth response? Obviously, the growth response is promoting health, longevity, well-being. Of course, it's love. What's the biggest trigger for the protection response? That would be fear. So we have love and fear on opposite ends of the spectrum. No, sorry, your cells can't do both. It's either one or the other. Choose either a growth response or a protection response. Or door number 3, the elevator music, the lack of response. So if you're going through life with a lack of response either way, that could be a problem, right? You're just kind of dead going through the motions, but we want to go for these growth responses. So love being the most powerful trigger. And when you activate a growth response, the HPA axis, you've heard of that, the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, carries out either of these responses, either the growth response or the protection response. So when the HPA axis kicks into gear via a threatening environmental stimulus, that message hits the hypothalamus, that's the brain's control tower for all manner of hormonal and metabolic function. You will signal your pituitary gland, that's the master gland that controls the activity in trillions of cells throughout your body. You will signal the pituitary to mount a protective response known as the fight or flight response, right? The adrenal glands are going to flood the bloodstream with stress hormones, and you repeatedly and abusively stimulate this fight or flight response, your health is going into the toilet and you're going to accelerate aging. And that is pretty much the essence of hectic, high stress modern life. Isn't it though? Is overstimulating, triggering this fight or flight response all day long with the dysfunctional family interaction in the morning, yelling at your teenager as he or she heads off to school for a whole bunch of fight or flight stimulation, because that could be a rough time, developing your identity and processing these messages and trying to balance that that stored subconscious programming, that flawed programming that came from 0 to 6 and make sense of it all. Oh man. What a lousy way to start the day. And then you jump into the traffic jam, and then you go see your mean boss and get criticized, and you're triggering these protection responses all day long. Fight or flight response becomes exhausted, immune system is suppressed, and it's bad news. So we have to be aware that our cells are either in growth mode, protection mode, or elevator music. They cannot multitask. Is this cellular function stuff important? Yes, it is. It literally has life or death repercussions. Here's an amazing insight from a book we published a long time ago called The Primal Prescription by Robert Murphy and Dr. Doug McGuff. McGuff also wrote Body by Science, great book. And he was talking about some science that was published in the Annals of Family Medicine, 2013, a study revealing that women who receive false positive results on their mammograms have to sit in fear for a certain period of time until the accurate diagnosis or the further screening comes through. These women were found to have experienced the same level of psychosocial harm as women who received an actual diagnosis of cancer. Sometimes this stuff was corrected in days, right? You go for your follow-up and they go, oh, okay, actually you're okay. Sorry about that. Hope you had a great weekend. No, really, I didn't. I was flooding my cells with a protection response. And guess what? You know how long the repercussions lasted from this short-term protection response due to the false positive? 6 months. They were flooded with stress hormones and protection responses for 6 months. And this stuff can decimate your health. So that 6 months of elevated stress hormones, whatever they studied, the psychosocial questionnaire of how they're feeling about life after going through that false positive ordeal. So the acute manifestations lasting for 6 months, but the complete in total negative health repercussions of getting a false positive diagnosis, even for a short time before it's corrected, were observed to last for 3 years. That's what's called a cancer scare, huh? Whew. Okay, so whatever the circumstances are, whatever the environmental signals are that generate these negative thoughts and trigger the protection response, it might as well be the tiger chasing us for the level of destruction that it causes to our potential for health. And so we want to send that renewal signal to our genes that Dr. Artavani talks about when he's talking about fasting or lifting heavy weights. We send a renewal signal to our genes, an anti-aging repair and renewal signal. That's the opposite of the protection response, where we are fight or flight, protecting ourselves from immediate damage and trauma with negative long-term health repercussions. And in the case of thoughts, which is basically the content of both of these shows, we have complete power and control over our thoughts. Remember Carrie Sisson's insight from spiritual psychology that your thoughts are the source of all your pain, not what's happened to you, but your thoughts about what's happened to you. Whew. So what sense do we make of all this? Let's cross-promote with some other shows. How about the relationship commentary from Dr. John Gray and Mia Moore and Wendy Walsh, whereby you can come to your partnership, your relationship with an open heart and getting control of your emotions, developing emotional self-stability, like I talked about in Breather Shows, the great insight from Medium.com columnist Chris Gage, developing that emotional control, trying to be empathetic and listen to where your partner's coming from rather than trigger this protection response anytime someone gives you feedback. Maybe see the other person's source of their pain and their subconscious programming playing out. Have some compassion for the destructive effects of this flawed and traumatic subconscious programming. You can observe it in others. And what do you do to help correct it? Is you send into the environment, into the vibes, a growth response, a renewal response. Simple as validating what someone has to say. Even if it's bullshit, you can validate that that's how they feel, right? We can turn the corner. John Gray did such a great job discussing the importance of having the Venus talks. And remember, with a quick reminder, males, never speak when you have a negative emotional charge. Even saying something like, my feelings were hurt, is death to a relationship. That's pretty heavy, man. Females, never use a complaining tone of voice to dispense feedback. It will bug the crap out of your partner. The male's primary biological drive is to take care of you, protect you, be seen as the hero in the story. So even minor nitpicking complaints will bug the crap out of him. So, really easy to just adhere to these guidelines? No, not so easy. That's why we have to unwind and escape from flawed subconscious programming, become conscious, change our behaviors, change our thoughts. And those are two pretty fun, heavy breather shows. Good luck out there. And go get the book, Biology of Belief by Dr. Bruce Lipton, or Ageless Body, Timeless Mind by Dr. Deepak Chopra. Thanks for listening. Thank you for listening to the show. We would love your feedback at getoveryourselfpodcast@gmail.com. And we would also love if you could leave a rating and a review on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts. I know it's a hassle. You have to go to desktop iTunes, click on the tab that says ratings and reviews, and then click to rate the show anywhere from 5 to 5 stars. And it really helps spread the word so more people can find the show and get over themselves, because they need to. Thanks for doing it. This is Brad. I want to tell you about my life-changing acquisition of a personal home-use sauna. I have a 6x6 barrel sauna in my backyard, ready-made heat therapy, a fabulous unit from Almost Heaven. Check out their website. You can very affordably order your own sauna for installation in your backyard or garage and have a sauna experience, the fabulous health benefits accruing from exposure to hot temperatures. Get that sweat going. These are beautiful traditional dry barrel saunas where you splash the water on the rocks, go in there and relax. It's become a social centerpiece at my home. People traveling from far and wide to come check out the barrel sauna, turn the dial or set the timer and walk in to 200 degrees in the Caribbean seas. For some reason, people like to come to the sauna more than my cold tub. Go figure. Check out almostheaven.com and their beautiful natural wood designs, and pretty soon, surprisingly affordable, you will be in the home sauna business.